I'm going to go into a lot more depth than I did in the presentation. Otherwise, it would have taken too long. As it was a long time. So this is how it was achieved from the beginning to the end. So now these two are really similar shots, but this is really kind of the first shot that we started preparing for. Now this is after we found locations all up and down the coast of Florida. And we were really looking for a beach. But where we were down in the Keys, way down, there really wasn't a beach that we had access to. So we drove around, and we turned into every single drive that we could possibly turn into to see if it would work. Now back then, I used a program called SunPath, and this was a lot more accurate than any app that people have on their phones now. And with that, I used a hand-bearing compass so that I knew ahead of time exactly to the degree where that sun was going to come up and where that sun was going to go down. And then in conjunction with another instrument, I knew where that sun was going to be all day long in the sky. So now I had the readings, and I needed an area that was going to be open, of course, to sunset. So we drove in, and this was a KOA campground. Okay, well, as you can see here, there's no sand anywhere. So I had one assistant that was about 100 yards away, I guess, with a bucket, go over there and fill it up with sand. So as you can see right here, there's sand right here. This is all I really needed because I was going to show was the grill and one tire. That's all I really had in mind showing. So now that I know where that sun was going to drop on the horizon to the single degree, I position that car. So as you can see, I'm at this angle right now. This angle here to that bumper, to the front grille, to where that sun was going to go down. And so where I had it was in a position that is called the law of the light. Now some people just call it the angle of reflection, but that's not true because it takes two angles. It takes the angle of incidence and it takes the angle of reflection. So what I wanted to do is position that car so that I could get the pop, we call it the pop, off the headlights and the chrome of the front of 57 Chevy. So that car, that front of that grille is positioned straight out to where that sun was going to set. So then we put the sand around it, and we were getting close to being ready. Now we were there most of the day, getting ready and just positioning, get sand. Even though we waited around for a long time, I was used to that because I did not like ever to be in a rush. Always wanted to sit around waiting after all the preparation was done. So now, as you can see, in this next shot, the sun is getting ready. As you can see the light, how nice the light is. So I know that I'm in a pretty good position now. I can back that car up. I can put it back just to fine tune this. Because what happens is, if I'm in that absolute same angle, and that is the angle of incidence, which is the light that is falling, the light that over here, the light that's falling on a subject. And that angle from the sun, that angle of incidence is at a specific angle, a degree. And then that's the angle of incidence. Incident light is a light that falls on a subject. Reflected light is a light that reflects off a subject. So now I position myself so that once the light falls on the subject, it's going to bounce off to the camera, and it's going to bounce off at a particular angle. And so when that angle of incidence is the same as the angle of reflection, you're going to get this kind of look. And if you've ever driven in a big city and you went by a glass building and all of a sudden it's just glowing, that's because you're driving through that angle where the light hitting the glass on the office building is the same angle as it bouncing off to you, your eyes. And as you can see, as you drive by, the light disappears because you are driving out of that angle. So now I know where it's going to be. So back over here, we're positioning it. Now, I also know that I don't want to be in the absolute exact same angle, because if I did, it would be too much. This would just be exploding, and it would look bad. I wouldn't be able to get it. So I was actually off a few degrees off that angle, so that I would get just this kind of reflection, the pop on the chrome, and not where it was blaring. And so what we did was, so now that I know where that sun is going to drop to the 1 degree, we waited until the sun was gone. I did not want the ball of the sun in the photograph. What I wanted was the light that was coming off it, because even if that sun is gone, I'm still going to get that angle here. As you can see, that sun was well off the horizon, so that I could get this kind of color in the sky. So now I used a handheld meter. It was called a 1 degree spot meter, and it read 1 degree of light. Unlike the meters in your camera, that even if you put it on spot, it's going to maybe at best 5, 6, 7 degrees. Well, this read 1 degree, and it was a meter that I held up to my eye and took readings. So, in other words, I could read just the white wall tire. I could read just the name Chevrolet. I could read just this part of the cloud. I could read just this part of the cloud. I could read just this area. So you see, I had complete control of all the light, all the different highs and lows of the dynamic range. The dynamic range being the exposure between the brightest part of your scene and the darkest part of your scene. That's the range, called dynamic range. And so I waited until I could take a reading where this chrome right here was the same value as this area. This reads exactly the same. It could be off maybe a third of a stop or a quarter of a stop, but no more than that, a third of a stop probably. And that's why I could get this light looking properly exposed and the grill properly exposed, because they both reflectively were the same. I couldn't take an incident reading because that's the light that's falling on this grill, and that would have been totally different. I need to take a reading of the light that's reflecting off the grill, not just reflecting off the grill, but the light that's reflecting off of all this too. So you can see all this. And I had to pick an area, obviously, or somewhere in between. I couldn't go for too bright an area because it would throw everything off. Now you remember, there's no Photoshop back then. I had to be dead on within a third of a stop of my exposure. That's why I waited until I could read every aspect of the sky, of the water, and of the grill. Now, in order to get that white wall to look, we had a piece of white board, foam board, that was bouncing back in there to make that white wall tire look good. And you can see how the chrome is even reflecting, and that's because of this white card. So that's basically how we achieved it. You could not have achieved this photograph in one exposure without a 1 degree spot meter, so that I could read every aspect of this photograph. And when that light was just dead on, where everything was within a third of a stop, and that's not much. The reflection of the water, the sky, and this area right in here is all within 1/3 of a stop from one another. And this is how I was able to achieve that shot and just about everything that you saw in my presentation, because I knew to the 1 degree where all the different lights, from the brightest area of light to the darkest, And I knew exactly what each one of those readings were because of the meter that I was using.